How do you pronounce this word? You see, every once in a while, I'll hear a word spoken in England that causes my head to spin, because my first question is always, are you pronouncing it that way to be funny? I do that sometimes, or is that actually how you pronounce it here? And I'm always caught off guard with just how many tiny variations in words there can be. So even if I try to blend in and not come off too Americanly, this word and the next ones in my list will be the red flags to make everyone's next question be, all right, so where are you from originally? Failed the test. My name is Edinger, and I grew up in the States, but I'm a full-blown Londoner now. These are the 9 words that I'm surprised Brits pronounce differently. So this word comes from French, so it's gonna be bastardized by whatever variant of English you so choose. But the British pronunciation of this is just so wild. In America, we would say lieutenant, whereas over here, they say lieutenant. There's no excuse for this. I've seen many theories as to why Brits have added an F sound in there. One of them is that the letter U used to also have a V sound, lieutenant, before the letters split in the language. Another is that when the word entered the English vernacular, it was from not the French language as we know it today, but an older dialect of Norman French, where maybe that was how it was said. We just don't know. Other theories consider the fact that the one in command that stands to the left might make it the lieutenant, but these are all just theories. One thing's for sure though, inarguably, the American English pronunciation is closer to what's said in modern day France and is phonetically way more sensical. I never want to hear another British person complain about how Americans pronounce the word herbs wrong ever again, all right? Or at least, maybe I want to start hearing the letter H come out of the word hour when Brits say it, just for a little consistency, okay? So that's one more point to America for a more correct pronunciation. This is gonna be spicy. The next word is the one that set this entire video in motion. I'm sitting at Heather's family's house, it's Christmas break, and one of them says the word Alzheimer's. That's so close to how I pronounce it, but also not. So I ask, do you normally pronounce that super Germanically? Turns out, yeah. In American English, I've only ever heard it called Alzheimer's, but I could be forgetting things. Where was I? Oh yeah. To be fair to the Brits, their pronunciation is actually the closest to the original, as the word originated from the German neurologist who discovered it, Alois Alzheimer. What's ironic about this is that from my knowledge of the German language, if I hadn't looked up the etymology online, I'd want to say the word came from alt, the word meaning old, heim, meaning home, and which is similar to the English suffix meaning one who does a thing. So that would make the word mean, you know, Alzheimer, someone who lives in an old folks home. But no, that's just a coincidence. Either way, the British pronunciation did throw me for a curveball, but it is way closer to the original way it's pronounced, so they get a point. It makes sense. It's a German word from a German name, Alzheimer. This is one where I feel like the Americans have failed miserably, but to be fair, a lot of Germanic sounding words in American English don't sound as German anymore. There was a huge push during the World War II era in which America was like, actually, German's not nice. We should not be encouraging this language. So it kind of fell out of favor with a lot of Americans. So I have no idea if that is linked to this at all. But just another little fun fact for you there. This is a word that I heard so much as a kid, probably because one of my dream jobs was becoming an inventor, coming up with cool devices, and becoming rich off of my patents. It was patent pending. What she said was patently false. But in the UK, it has tripped me up quite a fefew times. They pronounce it patent, which it just involves opening my mouth for far too long. I don't like it, all right? But I have heard patently way more now than patently. So my brain is all sorts of confused. Like it wants to think I have a patent, just kidding, that's patently false. I don't like that, I'm going in between now. The word patent comes from the Latin patere. Sounds Finnish to me, but it means to lay open or to suffer, which is ironic considering patenting something is closing the design commercially to all but you, but I guess you're laying open the design in a way. But patere is closer to the American pronunciation, so I'm gonna give America a point for this. Also, I do not know Latin, so if I'm pronouncing things wrong, I'm gonna lay it out. I'm sorry, all right? Time to get demonetized. The IT Crowd is one of the few British shows that I've watched and enjoyed. Side note, I did see the first episode of Vera the other day, and it was by far the worst episode of anything that I've ever seen in terms of how it was shot. Genuinely felt sick at points. Either way, I did see 5 minutes of a recent episode, and wow, what a glow up. Anyway, the IT Crowd has this joke within an episode that's similar to one that Bart Simpson would make, but the joke really isn't that funny with the American pronunciation.
Well, File is my second name.
Oh, right, I see. Pedophile.
Who's a paedophile?
No. His name is Peter File.
His name is paedophile.
It's Peter File, not paedophile.
This is a word where when it comes up in conversation, I feel pronouncing it the American way, pedophile, is so different sounding that it causes Brits to double take a bit. So a lot of times I'll start with the American one out of habit and then end with the British, making it sound wrong in both ways, like pedophile. Now, British English does throw an extra letter into the word, but I'm on their side here. The reason? When I go out for a walk, I like to measure my steps with my iPhone's pedometer. And I'm walking about, so I guess you could call me a pedestrian. Unless I'm cycling, but then I'm using my pedals. You see what I'm getting at here? So now, when I hear the American pronunciation, I just think, what in the Tarantino? Well, he's got a foot fetish? He's a pedophile? A lover of feet? But no, the word is actually podophile. But that also makes sense. I've got my tripod here, which has 3 legs, tripod. A podiatrist studies feet, or he's a foot doctor rather, and a podium is one in which you stand behind with your feet. Ped is the Latin root for foot, whereas pod is the Greek root. And English loves combining everything into a lovely confusing mess, so here we are. Brits use the Greek root for child or boy, which is ped, and so their pronunciation is far more accurate, so that's, I guess, a point for Britain. Plus, the shortening of the British pronunciation sounds to my ears better and more offensive. He's a pedo versus he's a pedo. I've not really heard the latter that much compared to the former. Maybe that's because I've lived in Britain too long, but I just think the British use of the shortening of the word is way better, I guess, than Americans. I haven't heard as many Americans say pedo as much as I've heard Brits go pedo. Maybe that's from all the British TV I've consumed, or from the fact that too many YouTubers back in the day were pedophiles. But one final point with ortho being from the Greek root for straight, combining everything you know now, you can safely assume that orthopedics who perform surgery on the musculoskeletal system are in fact just doctors who work on straight children. English is very weird. All right, I don't need you anymore. You know what else is weird? How British people pronounce this word. The first time I asked Heather to pronounce this word for me, she said it in the American way. Made me feel proud, I suppose. So I asked her to put the word policy at the end, like at the bottom of a website. Then the RP came out. Privacy policy. Oh, it does flow off the tongue that way, I have to say, but I don't want any privacy. I want some privacy. Hasn't anyone heard of a thing called privacy? I want a privacy policy. I keep my data private. I don't keep it privet, do you? Speaking of, isn't that where like Harry Potter lives? Somewhere like Privet Drive? But yeah, wait. Brits also say the word private, but they don't say privet, so then why do they say privacy? Americans in this regard are at least a little bit more consistent. We definitely aren't in a couple more of the words later in this list, but for this one reason, I feel like we deserve a point, right? For those wondering though, the word privacy comes from the Latin word privatus, meaning withdrawn from public life. This doesn't really sound like either the US or the UK pronunciation here, so I am just gonna give a point to the US one for at least being a little bit consistent between private and privacy. Private, privacy, why? I guess it's like nation, national, vagina, vaginal. Why are those the 2 words I was coming up with? Oh boy, this word. So I've talked about this word before lightly in a video on like London words that tourists get wrong, and the American pronunciation seems to annoy many Brits. We pronounce it buoy. They pronounce it boy. So now if I can look at the word like phonetically, the American pronunciation doesn't really hold water. Where's the E sound come from? Wouldn't it at least be like buoy? I don't know. Maybe if we look at the French pronunciation, that might help. Buoy. That does sound fun, like maybe like Mario flying with his cape. Buoy? Buoy? I'll take it. It does sound more like the American pronunciation, but it is a bit more complex than that. The word buoy, its origins can be traced not just to Old French, but also to Middle Dutch and to Low German in the 13th century. This was a really cool time when words were being developed by different languages all in close proximity and influence to one another. So the modern word is a sort of hybrid between the Proto-Germanic word for beacon or signal, baukna, which evolved a lot over time, and the Old French word for chain or fetter, buoy. So buoy. Also as a note, my French, honestly probably worse than my Latin. The amount of people that comment on my videos say when I was trying to say why not in French the other day, and I went, pourquoi no? And they're like, it's pourquoi pas? That's tout merlight. That's not the right language. Je suis désolé. All right? That's it. I'm out of French. That being said, the British pronunciation is also more consistent with the word buoyancy. You know, buoyancy. So I can't give a point for privacy and privacy or whatever if I can't give a point here. So I just don't like that it's a homophone with the word boy, you know? I don't like that. You can see a boy out in the water and you're like, oh, that's fine. You're like, no, I meant boy. There's a young male child. All right? I don't like it. Yeah, boy. That's how it should be said. This is one of those words I only really ever heard in the context of National Geographic documentaries or science class as a kid, but the American in me wants to say glacier. But every time a British person says it, it's more like glacier. Obviously, Brits with a southern accent love ignoring the sound of the letter R when it's at the end of a word, and they place the sound of the letter R at the end of words where the next sound is a vowel sound. Boxer, glacier, fighter, the R disappears. Where did it go? To Pizza Express instead of Pizza Express. Oh, I saw it yesterday instead of I saw it yesterday. Even this American TV show would have an extra R in there. It's not Law and Order, it's Law and Order. It's actually quite fascinating. It's one of those things where I love pointing out that little tiny thing that a lot of people don't notice, because it's just so cool how we all have different little things that we do to make our language fit the way our mouth sounds. I love it. No negatives, no notes, just fun. All right, back on topic. The word glacier does come from French, glace, meaning ice. So if you're going super Frenchy, you might say glacier, if you didn't know French like me. But the British approach is way closer to the original French pronunciation, so gotta give them another point for that. Maybe we can pull it back with this word. This is one of those where it's really subtle and you might think you're hearing the same pronunciation, but if you listen closely, the British and American versions, well, they're just off enough to make you second guess yourself, just a little bit. In the States, we would say territory, 4 syllables, whereas a Brit mashes it more into 3. Territory. Just like the recent general election, the Tory kind of disappears at the end. It's kind of poetic if you think about it. Now it's just a tree, territory versus territory. You've got the Latin word territorium, which, yes, does sound a lot more like the American pronunciation, which means the land around a town or sovereign state. Land, because terra is the Latin word for land. There you go. In terms of my totally legit points-based system, I guess America gets a point for being the closest, but this one's just a fun difference between accents. Territory, territory, territory. Lovely. And this final word, I'll just say it. I think the British pronunciation sounds a bit silly. I've received comments about this word in the past, and if you have to change the spelling to get your pronunciation across, it's not exactly phonetic, is it? British people advertise advertisements, whereas Americans advertise advertisements. Accent on the ties versus advertisements. Advertisements, I'm going to advertise my advertisements, versus I'm going to advertise my advertisements. I'm just saying the American one is a little bit more consistent this time. But where the word comes from is actually quite interesting as well. In Latin, we have the word advertere, pronounced awfully there, sorry, which means to direct one's attention to, like to direct one's attention to the subscribe button if you enjoyed. And in Old French, we have avertissement. My French is awful, but avertissement is meant to mean warning. Like warning, the next section of this video is an advertisement. Whoa. In terms of syllabic stress, this is closer to the British pronunciation, which stresses advertisement, whereas a lot of American pronunciations don't often place the stress 3 syllables from the end of a word while rushing the final 2. Britain loves that. Controversy versus controversy. Laboratory versus laboratory. Maybe you guys do just like erasing the word Tory from words, I've just figured this out. But either way, no matter how you pronounce it, this is what makes learning English both incredibly difficult and incredibly fun. No matter the points awarded here for closeness to the original or whatever I say, languages grow and evolve over time, and that's what makes it interesting. It's why I have comments on my video talking about my Spanish progress, saying both, I can't speak Spanish at all, and also, I speak excellent Spanish. Commenters from Spain seem to be of the belief that because I've not learned their specific dialect of the language, my Spanish is bad and awful. Whereas commenters from Mexico, Chile, and a lot of other Latin American countries, they were very impressed with my Spanish. As an American, I grew up surrounded by more Latin American Spanish, and that's also the Spanish I'm learning, so that's fine. It's not like one's wrong and one's right, it's more just, I don't know, super interesting to find out like how over time these languages develop little quirks. But in terms of English, I'm still learning new words every day that are used in England that I've never heard of in the US, and to me, that is genuinely exciting. You may never catch me saying lieutenant ever, but I do pick up and change certain pronunciations depending on who I'm with and where my mind is at, especially because a lot of times I do try and blend in a bit, and so I might find myself saying things like privacy. Oh, I'm just kidding, I kept it, I know. Like from this list, for instance, I do find myself in certain conversations saying boy instead of buoy, like Trinity Boy Wharf. I filmed a couple videos there before. It's just weird because now the word boy, I wouldn't see one and go, look at that boy. I would say, look at that buoy. And you're like, where are we? Oh, we're at Trinity Boy Wharf. Same with like the West India Keys. I wanna say quays, but that'd be quasi. All right. Like I said, this video has an advertisement for Squarespace, but that sounds so odd in my accent. hey guys, this video has an advertisement. It doesn't sound right. You're gonna say, this video has an advertisement, and that is for Squarespace. So if I wanted to tell you about today's video sponsor, I'd call it an advertisement for Squarespace, your all-in-one website builder, helping you build the website of your dreams. But let me change my shirt first. Not because I already shot this ad in a different day, just because I like changing shirts. Squarespace has loads of professional looking templates that you can edit to your pleasing for you to make your own web store to sell your fun little items. And you can also make a blog. Well, why stop there? You can even make a portfolio of your photography like I did on evanedinger.com. It's a website that I made using Squarespace. I thought it would take me a long time, to be honest, but it was actually really easy. My personal story with Squarespace is I just wanted a nice place to store my photography since websites like Instagram and such are going down and it's kind of depressing in that way. So at least I have this place where I can be like, here's some nice photos I really like, and every once in a while I sell things on my little web store. And also I actually get a lot of interesting brand deals and comments from you guys coming through to my Squarespace website about like, hey Evan, have you considered doing a video about this thing? And I'm like, oh my God, no. Is it too late to say it's still a new year, new beginnings? It's a new time to make your own website. So if you want to make a website, use squarespace.com/evanedinger and you can try it out for free. And once you realize you love it, if you use my link and or my code, you can get 10% off. So thank you very much to Squarespace for sponsoring. Now, let me wrap this up. I'd love to hear if there are any other words that cause you to double take where you're like, what? As they're just really fun to hear about. I did make a video on the 12 British words I now use every day, like bin, a brilliant one. So I'll link that video above. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next Sunday. Goodbye. Can you say privacy policy for us on camera? No! Boo! Will my British girlfriend ever say hi to you again? No. So, hope you have a nice day. Bye.